Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a 20 Court of Stars that my team and I timed for a +1. It was the first dungeon this expansion so far that I've done that's been over a 20 that we've timed, or that's been 20 or more. And so it's the first portal that I've gotten for the Keystone Hero thing. Feels pretty good. It's nice to have those portals. They're like crazy time savers. And I think it's really interesting. They've got implications beyond, as long as the portals stay in future expansions. For example, if you ever want to go back and you want to do like a reputation farm, right? Let me pause on my talents because I want to talk a little bit about this. If you ever want to go back in the future and do like Legion reputation farming, then getting the Court of Stars portal is huge, because then you don't ever have to get like a Dalaran Hearthstone. You never have to make your way to Dalaran. All you can do is you can be like, man, today I want to do some Legion rep farming. Click on the portal, boom, I'm in Legion. Now I can do the farming, right? So that's one thing that I'm looking forward to for future old dungeons being a part of the Mythic Plus rotation, is unlocking these portals to places that are usually a little harder to get to, like Mists of Pandaria, for example. The Shadowmoon Burial Grounds portal is going to be big, because then if you ever want to do Mists of Pandaria stuff in the future, if you're a collector or you're trying to do lore master, or you're doing some kind of reputation farming, you can just click on that portal, and then you don't have to go to Orgrimmar or wherever you're going, find a portal, and then make your way over there. You could just instantly have it, and it's super nice. Huge quality of life thing, in my opinion, as long as these portals stick around. Okay, so I wanted to talk about my talents briefly. At the time of making this video, there's a big push. There's a lot of confusion in the Shadow Priest community. A lot of people are confused because the top Shadow Priests, in most of their keys, are playing like Psychic Link for some reason, right? And none of the Wowhead or Icy Veins guides ever mention playing Psychic Link. Everybody's like, you should only ever be playing, Mind Seer and focusing your AoE damage on that. So a lot of people are confused. They're like, hey, what the heck? This 3k IO Shadow Priest is playing Psychic Link. He's obviously doing something right. How come you guys are telling us to only play Mind Seer? Let me explain. So, the people telling you to keep playing Mind Seer and play Shadow Crash and Void Eruption and all that, they're correct. I would say believe those people. Because here's why the top Shadow Priests are playing Psychic Link, and it's good for them, and why you should not. The top Shadow Priests are doing keys that are 23s, 24s, super high. And they're playing these keys with a very coordinated group of players who all have an assignment. They all have an idea of what the other players are doing, right? They're a very well-oiled machine. And so they can approach a key and they can think, okay, how do we want to utilize our Shadow Priest to the best of its ability? Do we want our Shadow Priest to be the character in our group who is doing the most boss damage? Do we want our Shadow Priest to be the character in the group who is doing the most spread target cleave, right? What do we want our Shadow Priest to be doing? And they're going to be asking that question for their Shadow Priest, for their healer, for their 2 other DPS, right? And they're going to formulate a plan to attack that specific key. And so for those top end Shadow Priests, the answer for what their Shadow Priest should be doing a lot of the times is, yeah, he should be playing Psychic Link. The stuff lives long enough that Psychic Link is going to get a lot of value. This person is playing around it correctly. He's generating the right insanity at the right times, using it on the right targets, things like that. So maybe in their scenario, the correct answer is for them to play Psychic Link. Now, in your scenario, in 99% of players, my scenario even, I'm not just saying that you're bad, you shouldn't play it. What I'm saying is, in my scenario even, in 99% of all other scenarios, you're going into a group with a bunch of random people, right? On a key that is not 24, right? And you guys don't have a solid plan as far as so-and-so on this pack specifically. So-and-so is going to be using this cooldown. So-and-so is going to be kicking this mob, right? You don't have that plan. The very top-end Shadow Priests do. And so those people, for those and this goes beyond Shadow Priest, right? For those Mythic Plus players, it makes sense for them to do things that are different than what you're doing and different than what makes sense for you. So for us lower tier players, right, who aren't at the very, very cutting edge of Mythic Plus, in general, you will do more damage if you play a more general Mind Seer oriented build that is just better. It's just better for if you do not have a completely fleshed out plan for the dungeon, right? If there's going to be a little variation in your dungeon where you weren't expecting the Arms Warrior to pop Avatar, I think Avatar is an Arms Warrior spell. If you weren't expecting the Arms Warrior to suddenly do 250,000 DPS on a pack, right? You're better off playing this build, this Mind Seer oriented build, like all of the Shadow Priest Theory crafters are saying, than you would be if you were playing the Psychic Link build, right? I'm just putting that out there. I know it feels kind of weird to see the top Shadow Priests doing something completely different than you, but you have to recognize that until you get to that point where you're also in their situation, your answer to the question of what should I be doing in this key is different than their answer. And so what you should be doing is different than what they are doing, right? Okay, that's my spiel at the beginning. Hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have any arguments or you think I'm wrong or you have any questions about that, definitely leave a comment. I think this is one thing that the Shadow team has been having a headache trying to get across to people. It really does make more sense to not be doing what they're doing. And maybe my argument just wasn't very good and maybe I need to explain it a little better. So definitely let me know. Okay, so now we're past that first RP. Something that I'll mention, in case there is a Blizzard developer watching this video, hello, if you are here. If you are here, RP, and maybe you agree with me, but RP in Mythic Plus dungeons really feels bad. So I know there's been a lot of feedback about this in the past. It's just weird to me that you would have a situation, a scenario where you're trying to beat a clock, right? So you're trying to go as fast as possible, but we're going to force you to not be able to influence some of those minutes, right? In Halls of Valor, for example. Halls of Valor, before, what's her name? Herja, I think is her name? Before the first boss on the left, the second boss, actually. Before her, there's a bunch of RP. Once you get to Odin at the end, there's a bunch of RP, right? In Halls of Valor, the amount of RP that happens adds up to more than a minute. It's like 2.5 minutes or something. So for this 30-minute timer, where we're trying our best to beat this timer, really that 30-minute timer should be 27 minutes and 30 seconds, right? Because there's 2.5 minutes where no matter what we do, there's no way to outplay it. No matter what we do, there will be 2.5 minutes added to our time that is unavoidable, right? That is just dead time that we can't use. Same is true in Court of Stars, although in this dungeon it's way, way smaller, right? It's just that, well, I guess there's a little. It's not just the boat ride across. Also at the very end when Elisande is talking to the Magistrix guy, there's a little bit of RP, but it doesn't matter as much. Anyway, my spiel is over now. Basically, RP in Mythic Plus dungeons, I think, should really be looked at and should probably be taken out, if not severely reduced. Or, on the other hand, something that could be done, let's say that the Halls of Valor timer is 30 minutes, like this one. If the Halls of Valor timer is 30 minutes, right there was something interesting. Our healer was running away from me, even though we both had Thundering and I was trying to clear. I'm not sure if he was trying to just keep the buff longer or if he was trying to avoid the Spiteful that I was avoiding. I don't know. Anyway, if the timer is 30 minutes and there's 2.5 minutes of RP and it's always the same amount of RP, right? You could measure how long it is. Add that to the timer. Just make the timer that much longer so that effectively, let's say it's 2.5 minutes of RP in Halls of Valor and the timer is 30 minutes. Just make the timer 32.5 minutes. So then, although, yeah, there's going to be people who complain, why is it 32.5 minutes? Why not make it 30 minutes and get rid of the RP. That's a valid argument, I think, but yeah, it just feels really bad to have something like that where we're going to have 30 minutes to do this dungeon, But for 2.5 of those minutes, we're forced to do nothing, to do literally nothing the whole time. And there is some emergent gameplay that comes from that, right? In scenarios where you can start RP but then go do other stuff, then RP isn't as bad of a thing, right? It opens up the possibility for players to be like, to optimize, right? To say, okay, we know for this next 2.5 minutes we're not going to be able to fight this boss, so instead we're going to go pull 3 extra packs. And that's like a skill thing that like makes that group more skillful than the other group. Right here, this Duskwatch Sentry gets off this... I should pause. I think I'm going to die. This Duskwatch Sentry gets that thing off. What is it? He alerts he sounds an alarm is what he does. And then what happens when this happens is a reinforcement enters the fray, right? So I might die here, but it might be hard to see. Oh, it looks like I didn't. There's an extra mob in this poll that is not normally here, called a Duskwatch Reinforcement, I'm pretty sure. And as far as I'm aware, I think they do give count, but I'm not going to say that for sure. So we did do it on purpose. I'm just not sure what the purpose was, right? I remember them talking about it and being like, okay, because we let that go off, now we don't have to do whatever further on in the dungeon. And maybe I'll talk to them and figure out what that is, but I don't know off the top of my head. So we did do that on purpose. Maybe talk to your friends and see if they know, but there are reasons for, doing things like that. Although, in that specific scenario, our rogue went over to him and thought he kicked him, but he didn't kick him, so it went off, right? And it turns out that was a good thing as far as our strategy is concerned. I don't know why. Anyway, so in this pack, in these first couple packs, there are these, like Hecarim. If you play League of Legends, there are these horse dudes. Hecarim is a horse dude from League of Legends. There are these horse dudes that cast Charging Station. I think they're these Duskwatch. Maybe they're not the guards, actually. I don't remember their names. And I will say, as soon as we get to one, what its name is, but I don't remember. So they cast Charging Station, and what Charging Station does is, that is one thing that needs to be kicked. That Quelling Strike, by the way, is a frontal, so don't walk in front of it. Yeah, so there are these guys down here on the left, a construct, Guardian Constructs. They cast Charging Station, and Charging Station, if you don't kick it, will make the pole never die, right? So it puts like a giant heal on, a giant hot, a heal over time, on whatever he casts it on, usually himself. That makes it so you can't out DPS it. Here comes the Charging Station, we kicked it, right? So just make sure that, especially if you're watching, you should be watching this, right? You should be watching your group's kicks, but make sure that if that's going to go off, make sure, like, here comes one that just went off, he has this dot on him now, and his health is going to be going up, or making it hard to kill him at least, and you need to make sure that you kick those. Fortification, this is one that doesn't need to be kicked as badly. It puts a shield on the person, but it's a magic dispel, so you can dispel it with Mass Dispel, and you can dispel it with Arcane Torrent, or you can dispel it with Dispel Magic. Also, a mage can spell steal it, so if you have a mage in your group, then it might be worth it to... Another Charging Station got off, by the way. If you have a mage in your group, it might be worth it to let the mage spell steal that. You will see Suppress is one thing that you also need to kick. Suppress will suppress somebody, obviously. Make it so they can't cast anything. So you need a in this poll specifically, the Guardian Construct is like the only thing you need to worry about when you've got two priests like this, because he casts the Charging Station and he casts Suppress, and you need to stop both of those things every time. Anyway, so yeah, it might be worth it in a group with a mage to let those fortifications go off, so that the mage can steal the shield, and then they can have the shield on themselves, right? Although there isn't a lot of AoE damage that comes out in this one, but in this poll specifically, but why not let your mage have a shield when they can? Right here, that was a rough moment. And actually, this is a really rough moment. Oh man, let me go back and highlight this because it's really funny. So this spiteful is running at me, but I need to be careful not to run too far this way, because I'll pull the boss, right? This pack is not here anymore, so honestly, I could run a decent amount this way and be fine. But what I end up doing is I let this spiteful get closer, and then I psychic scream so that it'll start running away. But my psychic scream gets broken almost instantly. You'll see I scream, it's already broken, right? So now he's gonna. I think that he's still running away, but he's gonna turn around and slap me way hard in like half a second. Boom, it's right there. So if he slaps me one more time, I'm dead. So I need to run. My screen is flashing red, right? I'm like, oh crap, I'm gonna die. So then I'm like, okay, where? And honestly, I should be way over here. I can run so much further this way. But instead, I run over here to this corner because I'm like, oh crap, I want to get up on this bridge. So I run over here and I'm trying to jump into this garden area, but I just can't do it for the life of me. So this guy keeps getting closer and I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna die. And I end up pressing dispersion to stay alive. So I disperse and he smacks me again and I survive it, right? I just thought that was so funny. So I wanted to make sure I included it in this video because that's one of those moments where I should not have. That is like so bad. That is something that should never have happened. I should have just my game awareness was super low right now, right there. I should have known. Look how much room I have over here to run away from that spiteful. But instead, I was just like, oh man, I don't want to do. I don't know what I want to do. I'm panicking. Ah. And then at the very last second, I have to use disperse to not die to that guy. Super funny and definitely really bad play. So anyway, now we're gonna pull the patrol captain. Gerdo is his name. Funny name, I think. He's gonna do this resonant slash, which is a frontal and a behindle. I don't know what you would call that. Backle. I don't know. I would call it just like a cone thing on the front and the back. Again, arcane lockdown. This is the spell where you need to jump 3 times to get rid of this, or I think it suppresses you or makes you unconscious or something. Anyway, we've got 2 priests, so you'll notice both of us do this, but you can mass dispel this. We both did. Really, we should be alternating. And honestly, what we should probably do is decide whether it's better for him to do it or for me to do it, because one priest can handle every single arcane lockdown. So if it's better for me to do it because he needs to save mana for healing, then I should be the one doing it. Or if it's better for him to do it because I should be just doing DPS, then he should be doing it. But because we didn't talk about that, we're just both going to do it every single time. And once you're in this scenario, you can't really just say, oh, I'm not going to do it this time. I mean, you can literally say that, right? You guys can talk about it and figure it out. But you can't just be like, you can't just think to yourself, oh, I'm not going to do it, and then not do it. Because what if he's thinking the same thing and then it just doesn't get done, right? So like, once I'm in this scenario, if I'm not willing to talk to him about it, and maybe it's not a good time to talk about it, right? Maybe there's more stuff that you need to be talking about in this moment. Although, honestly, there isn't here. But if you're in a scenario where you can't talk about it at the moment, then your safest bet is to just do it every single time, right? So I'm going to do it every single time. We're going to get the boss down to... We'll see, actually. I can tell you exactly what it is. It's like 23%, 23 to 25% is when it's 25% that he goes and he drinks this flask of the solemn night. And then you'll notice we're doing something weird here. So this is going to take a little bit of time. I'll hit play. Our rogue went up ahead. The rest of us went backwards. So this is not just so that we can pull extra trash and then we're going to go join our rogue. Instead, we're not going to pull any trash, actually, and we're going to go run over to this door, because for anyone who doesn't know, once you get past a certain point, and actually our rogue ended up dying, he ended up not being able to do it, you just need to get past the... So you need some self-healing, right? Because there's a construct guardian up here who can see stealth. So you need to stealth past him. He's going to pull to you, right? So he's going to start smacking you. So you need to be able to survive long enough that you can get over to the next checkpoint area, which is where those where that like warlock dude is with all those eyeballs. Once you get there, these doors will open and your group can just walk through instead of having to go around. And it saves time, and mostly it just makes it so that you can skip that Guardian construct and have to fight other stuff, right? So you can see he's casting like Suppress and Charging Station and stuff. But our tank is just line of sighting stuff, or is far enough out of range that they don't hit him. And then, yeah, he's just running through. The rest of us are just sitting here. Honestly, what you could do, if the rogue was the one who went and did this, then, and we had our tank here, we could be pulling something else, right? This is just wasted time for our group. Although, I will mention that, this is not something that we had planned out in advance before doing the key. This is something that the tank had in mind, and it was shared in the MDT route, but we don't really look at those. I mean, these are pretty casual keys, right? We're not like a super serious group about this or anything. So then our tank dies and he comes over here, and now we're in a different spot of the map where we have access to things that we would not have access to had we gone the other way. We're going to kill all these imps. It's important that you don't let these fire bolts get off. Psychic Scream works on 5 of them, and then you've got like all these other ways that other people can handle them. Infernal Tome, so this is one thing that I'll mention about this dungeon. It has a lot of these different little things around the map that you can go interact with. I'm not sure what add-on this is that our tank is using that's telling you what things you can use, but it's important that, I still don't know all of these things, but it's important that you go figure out what each of them does and then plan your routes around getting those, right? So if you're trying to push like a really, really high key, you're gonna want these things, right? So like some of them give like more haste. Like this one is usable by me and by our healer, right? It's a priest thing. Some of them are class specific too. It's not only profession specific. And I'll even mention, before we started this key, our tank was asking us, what professions do you guys have? And we were like me, for example, I've got tailoring and enchanting. And he's like, okay. So then we figure out what profession we don't have in our group. And our tank, who is not, he's not all about professions, right? He doesn't really care. He's not a crafter. And that's something else I'll mention right there. This is a patrol that's walking back and forth. I was really lucky that I wasn't standing close enough to pull them. They do come over here, so I should have been standing over here. Anyway, our tank is willing to go change his profession. He's like, yeah, I know that we don't have a leather worker. I don't care about my professions, so I'm going to go change it. That's something that I would say you don't have to do. These aren't so big that it's going to change the like whether or not you time the key. They are big enough that if you're at a high enough key, it will do that. But if you're just at like a regular 15 or whatever, it's probably not worth dropping tailoring that you've spent, thousands and thousands of gold or whatever to get perfect at, and now you have to drop it to get leatherworking or whatever just to do this key. I would say don't do that. But if you are someone who doesn't care at all about your professions, you don't craft at all, then maybe it is worth, especially if it's a harder key, maybe it is worth talking to your group and figuring out what you should swap to. Right there, that scream of pain went off while I was casting something, which means I'm shadow locked. That is super frustrating, especially because I had just popped Mindbender, and so I'm losing like 5 seconds of my Mindbender window. And so right here, I let it go off before I do anything. That's important to keep in mind. I'm using Little Wigs, and in Little Wigs, you can go in and you can tell it to emphasize different things. I know you can do that in Big Wigs at least, so I would guess you can do it in Little Wigs too, because they're made by the same people. But you can emphasize different things so that it'll like play an air horn, or it'll like put a number on your screen that's counting down. There's one thing that I'll mention too. Our rogue right there, so we needed to clear Thundering. I had blue, our healer had red, and our rogue had blue, right? This is a moment of proactive play from our rogue. So our rogue is up here fighting the boss. All that he knows, unless he has like a list like this, and he can see us back here, all that he knows is he has blue and he needs to clear, or else he's going to get stunned, right? Me and the healer are standing right next to each other. We both see that we have opposite colors, and we both know that we're going to just stand by each other until the last second and then clear on each other. But the rogue doesn't know that. So 2 things I'll say here. First off, we should communicate that. we should either say, Thundering is taken care of, don't worry about it. I'm right next to the healer. We're going to clear in 2 seconds. Or the other thing that could happen is we could clear earlier so that he doesn't have to come out and move. And then the other thing I was going to say is, in his scenario, if you're playing this rogue right now, you're better off not just assuming that we're going to clear, right? He did the right thing. We're assuming we're going to clear, even though it was the less optimal thing for the group. He can't just assume that the two of us are going to clear. He needs to clear himself. If he gets stunned, it's on him, right? Even though me and the healer are standing right next to each other, the only way for him to guarantee that he doesn't get stunned is for him to clear. So he walks out and clears, when really what should have happened is I should have walked on top of the healer, or the healer should have walked on top of me, or we should have just said something. Hey, Bitzel, the rogue, you can just stay there. We're going to clear on each other so that he doesn't have to lose uptime and go back, right? We should have told him, hey, we got you, dude. Don't worry. But instead we didn't. He walks out and clears, and it's a little bit of a suboptimal thing, right? Again, that's one of those little things that isn't going to make the difference on whether we time the key or not. But it is important to look for those little things, because especially if you're playing with the same people all the time, and you're playing in Discord, right? So you are all talking, and maybe even you're going as far as like having meetings basically where you sit down at the same time and you look at a key. Maybe you all watch the same replay back. You look at a key and you say, okay, right there I tried to cancel my Mind Flay at the very last second, but I got shadow locked. Does not matter because nothing happens. Anyway, so maybe you all sit down at the same time and you all watch the same key. It's important that you identify those little suboptimal movements. Like if you're trying to go for the MDI or something, then you should definitely sit there and say, okay, he lost some uptime here. Why? The answer in that scenario would have been, oh, but also I'll mention, you can mass dispel this impending doom. So I'm not sure if one priest can get every impending doom, but the fact that we have 2 priests means that we can alternate and get every single impending doom. Anyway, the answer in this specific scenario as to why he lost uptime was strictly because the healer and I had poor communication, right? We didn't communicate with our group well enough. And you could argue that he should have had better awareness as far as seeing that me and the healer were standing next to each other, or you could argue that that maybe one of us should have walked in, like maybe it's the healer's fault. He should have walked in and cleared on the rogue, or he should have walked over onto me. But in reality, the best way to address that problem would be, okay, he came out and cleared when he didn't have to, right? That is on both of us equally. That's on all 3 of us equally, actually. Really, me and the healer should have communicated better, and the rogue should have been able to know that, and we could have just told him, right? But he should have known that the 2 of us were going to clear on each other, so he did not have to lose uptime. He could have just stayed in and kept fighting. Anyway, so that's another thing that was a really hard to see Thundering circle, but that's another thing that is really only important if you're in like I said, a group that's pushing really, really hard, and you're like willing to take the time out of your day to get together and watch videos back and things like that. If you are that group, then hit me up, because I definitely have a lot of things that I think would be helpful. I think I'm pretty good at watching stuff back like this and talking about it. So if you are looking for some like kind of coaching or anything like that, feel free to hit me up. I have some experience at the high end of WoW, right? Anyway, so right here I walk pretty close to this boss. Luckily it doesn't pull. You can Mind Soothe her, although we didn't. This waterlogged scroll, it looks like shamans, skinning people, and inscription people can get it, and it will give move speed. I think our rogue has skinning, so he's going to go get it. And then we've got these imps again. They all get their firebolts off, and that's what happens. So it's very important that you stop these firebolts. And I'll mention, this is not, there are like 10 imps or something. This is not something that you can stop with everybody just using their interrupt. This is something that needs to be planned for an AoE stun, right? So Shadow Fury from a Warlock, or the war stomp from a Taran or whatever it's called that warriors do that that does that. I've never played a warrior, so I don't know what it's called, but they have something that can stop that, right? The bear druid had something that could stop that. We all had something that could have stopped that. None of us stopped any of them, and this is just a 20, right? There are going to be harder keys than this, and they instantly killed our rogue and our healer, right? And almost killed our warrior. It almost killed 3 of the 5 people in our group. I'm super lucky because none of them targeted me. So, not my problem. Just kidding. It is obviously my problem because now we're wasting time. If we want to time this key, then it is my problem. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so now we're going to pull this. I think this is the last enforcer that needs to be pulled. That's the waterlogged scroll, I'm pretty sure. The triangle marker over here that our rogue went and grabbed. We've got these 2, this Legion Hound and the Shadow Mistress. She'll cast Bewitch. You need to make sure that does not go off. If it does go off, I'm pretty sure it's a magic dispel. So you can just mass dispel and get rid of it. Almost goes off there, but we stop it. This Legion Hound will jump on random people. Pretty sure, I'm not positive, so I won't say that. But I was going to say that I think that it's the furthest person. But like I said, I'm not positive. But it will jump on somebody usually at range, and that person, it'll put a... that's another Shadow Crash of mine that was really poorly placed. That person, it'll put a pool under you, and you need to walk out of the pool. So that Shadow Crash, like I was just saying, you want to get your stuff out as soon as you can. This is the Bewitch thing, by the way. It is definitely a magic dispel, and it just got magic dispelled off of me. You want to put your Shadow Crash... it's like when you're playing football. I don't know how many of you play American football, right? But in American football, when you're a quarterback, one of the first things you learn as a kid is when you're throwing the football to your receiver, the person who's going to be catching the football, right? You want to make sure that you throw it to where they're going. You're not trying to throw it to where they are currently, right? Because if you throw it to where they are currently, then in the time it takes for the ball to get there, they will have moved and you'll miss, right? Same is true with your Shadow Crash in World of Warcraft. When he pulled those 3 guys and they start running this way, I Shadow Crashed at where they were, and then in the time it took for my Shadow Crash to get there, they moved, so I missed, right? I hit one of them, but not all 3. Really, I should see them get pulled, and it could be a little hard with different packs to know where they're going to be going. It's not easily predictable all the time. But I should have known they're coming towards us, so I should throw my Shadow Crash a little in front of where they're going. Also, another thing I'll mention is stairs like this, any change in the Z-axis is up and down in World of Warcraft, any change in the Z-axis can mess up ground targeted abilities like that, to where you could hit, technically, you could have your circle land, you could have your Shadow Crush land on all 3 targets, but because some are standing higher and some are standing lower, it can cause some of them to get it and some of them not to get it. Something I'll mention here too, this Crushing Leap is going to target players. So we're going to stand, the Shockwave is a frontal, so you need to be careful with this, but this Crushing Leap is going to target players. So we're going to stand close in melee so that he doesn't jump way far, so that the melee can just sit here and keep fighting him instead of having to run way out and keep fighting him, right? But you do need to be careful about the Shockwave because it's a frontal and it will one-shot you. So just make sure you know which way he's pointing. Make sure you're standing not in the frontal. And then make sure you dodge when this frontal comes out so that he keeps jumping in one spot. Your melee will love you for it. Here comes another Shockwave. Like I said, we're just going to stand in the back. I'm playing Idol of Cthulhu, so I'm getting all these sweet Void Tendrils coming out. And then, yeah, I'm not popping my cooldowns because we're about to go into the boss. Not much else to say about this guy other than, just make sure, like right here, this is a very important moment. Let me go back because it's hard to see. So if you watch, as he gets lower and lower, our tank is going to start to move to go towards the next thing. And our tank moves right before this guy casts this Shockwave. Let's see if I'm right, actually. No, he didn't. Okay, so... oh, wait, yes, he did. Yeah, so the tank moved behind him on top of the rest of us right before the Shockwave came out. I'm pretty sure he dies before this goes off, but that means that the Shockwave is pointed directly at me. So I need to make sure that, yeah, it didn't go off, but it turned and faced me, right? So just something to be aware of is, even though every other time it was pointed away from me, I do need to keep in mind that it's possible for it to not be pointed away from me, so I do need to be watching. Okay, so here we're on the second boss, second of the 3 bosses. I'm just doing my opener rotation, single target rotation. I'm saving Shadow Crash. You need to make sure you kick those Withering Souls. Infernal, this is why I save my Shadow Crash, is because that Infernal Eruption thing comes out, and you want to time your Shadow Crash to land on those imps as soon as they come out. Withering Soul again, we kick it. I was overcapped on Insanity for a second there. I think it's something like every 4 points of Insanity is equal to like maybe not 1,000, but a bunch of DPS. I don't remember what the metric is, but it's important that you don't overcap on Insanity whenever possible, which is almost all the time. I will make the argument that there are times where you have to overcap on Insanity, although I think that the times where that is necessary are like super, super, super few. Like, I don't think there's very many of those. But yeah, I'm just shadow crashing every time I can on these imps. I want to make sure that I have as much Insanity as possible going into those imps so that I can be spamming. Like, you don't want to... Although there is an argument to be made for killing the boss as fast as possible, you don't want to just be using Devouring Plagues on the boss. You want to be saving some Insanity for when those imps come out, because those imps need to die quickly. Especially in a group that doesn't have a lot of AoE damage. My group does have a lot of AoE damage, right? Our warrior and our rogue do a decent amount of AoE damage, so maybe it's not as important for me to be doing that. Our tank is going to res the healer. I should have resed him because I've got more haste than the tank, but instead I just went to do this Guess Who thing. Something that our group did here with this Guess Who thing that I thought was good. We're talking the whole time in Discord about it. This guy's going to run and get these 2 clues, so I'm going to run over to the right and grab this clue. We already have all 5 clues. That was way faster than the last key that I did this in. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, this group, we're talking in Discord, we're going to say, there are these 2 groups that we can look at. Neither group has the noble in it, so we're saying in Discord at this point, he's not upstairs. He's not upstairs, which means for the people downstairs, you guys are the ones who are going to find him. We find him like instantly. So that's something that you could do to approach this. There are 5 clues that need to be found, and there are 5 players in your group, right? What you could do is send 1 player to every clue, or a different thing you could do, like in that scenario, this guy was giving a clue and this guy. 1 person can hit both those clues really quickly, so then the other person could be put, maybe downstairs looking at the nobles, trying to figure out who it is. You don't necessarily need all 5 people to go to a clue, but it is prudent to have some people upstairs and some people downstairs, and it's very important that you're talking as much as possible, saying, he's not upstairs, he's not upstairs, he is downstairs. Okay, it's this one. Boom, you instantly got it, right? This is some more of that RP that we have to wait for that I was talking about at the beginning of the dungeon. I pop Vampiric Embrace instantly, just so that I can help with some of this initial healing. Especially with these Shadow Bolt volleys, I've only got like 3 seconds more of Vampiric Embrace, so I'm only going to heal a little bit of that back up, but it's probably worth pressing, mostly just to get it on cooldown. You want to be using Vampiric Embrace as much as possible. Also, I will mention a sweet change that's coming in 10.0.5 is that Vampiric Embrace is going to be off the global cooldown now, which is super cool, because then you don't have to waste a GCD to press it, right? And hopefully, I mean, it even means that you could potentially macro it in to your power infusion macro, right? Like you don't even have to press the button in the future when it's off the GCD. You could just press 1 button and it gives you PI, it gives you Vampiric Embrace. I think it's going to make the low-end Shadow Priests who like never press Vampiric Embrace, they're going to have a much easier time getting that extra healing out for their group, because you can just add it to a macro, like I'm saying. You don't have to have a separate keybind that you have to remember to press every so often, right? That's another thing that I do in as many keys as possible, is I like to, when we are forced to go somewhere, like we were just now, I like to look for the people who are way behind and life grip them forward. Okay, and then now we're on the last boss. There you've got Elisande talking to this. Oh, maybe this guy is. Yeah, this guy's not the Magistrix. She's the Magistrix. This guy is Melandris. Anyway, so this is some more RP that doesn't necessarily need to be in the dungeon. And then, yeah, we're going to start fighting this boss. For anyone who didn't watch my last Court of Stars video, the strategy you want for this boss is this Blade Surge goes on the furthest target every single time, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to have one person, preferably arranged, obviously, but one person is going to go stand far away in the same place every single time. So for us, we chose the healer. It can be the healer. It could be you as a Shadow Priest. It's not hard at all. All you do is, like he's baiting them over here, you just stand in the same place, and it makes all these lines very easy to deal with. So once those lines go off, he walks back on top of these guys. He baits another one there. Boom, it goes off. And then these slicing maelstroms, all that I'll say about these is make sure you have some defensive for everyone other than the first one. Unless you're on a crazy, crazy high tyrannical key, then maybe you need a defensive for the very first one. But pretty much, usually you only need them for like the second and the third and everyone after that. I Vampiric Embraced on the second one. And you can see we've got a nice grouping of these guys over here, which means that at the very least, we know every single line will end over here, which will make it easier to dodge. Another one goes off right there. Really good baiting by our healer. And then something else I'll mention, you notice these tornadoes that are flying around. Because we have a rogue, our rogue can pop cloak and go run through a bunch of these. That's something that you should keep in mind for your groups. If you have a paladin can bubble and walk through all these. A rogue can cloak and go through all of them. A hunter can pop turtle and go through all of them to clear them. That's something that you might need to do on a hard tyrannical key when there's a million tornadoes running around, just to give yourself more room to do stuff, right? So yeah, we have like 20 of these guys over here. And then yeah, this is the fourth slicing maelstrom, so it's going to do a decent amount of damage. Make sure you health pot. I've got 1,000 health pots. Make sure you're using these as much as possible. Make sure you're using Desperate Prayer. And once you get high enough, you could tell your healer, hey, don't worry about me for this one. I'm going to press Dispersion, which will keep you alive through the whole thing, and you'll take very little damage. You can tell your healer, don't worry about me for this slicing maelstrom. I'm pressing Dispersion. Focus on the other guys. And you can rotate cooldowns like that, right? Like maybe even if your healer gets behind, you save all of your cooldowns so that you all press them at the same time. This is number 5, so it's going to do a lot of damage. You can see our healer got hit by a tornado, so we're in a little sketchy moment. I have Vampiric Embrace back up, but it doesn't matter because the boss is dead. I get my sweet achievement, Keystone Hero Court of Stars. Feels good. Oh, I actually did this dungeon before I did the dungeon before. I made my last video before this video, even though I did this dungeon first. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's going to be the end of the key. I'll hit play and see if I recorded the loot that I got, but I don't remember it being anything. No, I didn't. Okay. So that's going to be the end of the key. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, make sure you click the like button. If you really liked the video and you want to watch more of these in the future, then please subscribe to my channel and make sure you click the bell because it will send you a notification anytime I post a video so that you don't have to go look in your subscription box and say, oh, where's the next Nick Knock video? It'll just tell you anytime I post one, right? Then you don't miss future videos. Aside from that, if you want to follow me on Twitter, feel free. I have a link in the description. My Discord is in my Discord is in the description as well. If you want to contact me, for coaching or something like that, feel free to hit me up. Aside from that, that's going to be it. So I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!